My name is Anwar, and I've been working in the US tech industry for over 10 years as a data scientist. And in these 10 years, I've either read or skimmed through pretty much every single data science book I could find. And in this video, I'm going to share the best 4 data science books which are both beginner friendly and also cover different topics of data science in detail. And I can guarantee you that if you read those 4 books and fully understand the contents of it, you should be easily able to answer at least 80 to 90% of the questions which are asked in most data science interviews without a problem. The very first book which I would recommend is this Practical Statistics for Data Scientists from O'Reilly. This is probably the book which I have recommended the most to everyone who is seeking guidance on what kind of book they should be reading when they are ramping up on data science. The beauty of this book is that even if you have absolutely zero knowledge about data science and you do not even have strong mathematical and statistical foundations, this book starts from a very basic statistics knowledge like what is mean, what is average, what is standard deviation, and then gradually builds on top of building intuition around what is p-value, what is hypothesis testing, how do you do A/B testing, what is chi-square. So it goes and touches on all those relatively advanced statistical concepts which are asked in most of the data science interviews. And that is the first part of the book, which mainly talks about building the statistical foundation. And then the second part of the book builds on top of the first part. And there the authors talk about different machine learning concepts, and the explanation given there is very intuitive. They have used minimal amount of math there. And the reason I like this book very much is that starting from very basic foundations of what is statistics and how do we calculate the mean and average, and then it gradually builds to a point that you will be able to understand how gradient boosting trees work and also the fundamentals of deep learning. So I think this book, all in all, if you have not read this book and you are planning to become a data scientist, this is a recommended book. There are 2 editions of this book. If you are making a purchase, make sure that you're buying the second edition, which is the latest. And though this book does not have any prerequisite, I would still recommend that you develop a little bit of Python understanding so that you could follow along the exercises this book has given. And I'm pretty sure that if you try to do a good job of understanding the concepts and doing the exercises it has recommended, then by the end of the book, you would have a very good, thorough understanding of end-to-end on how different machine learning algorithms work, and also what is the statistical foundation based on which we run A/B testing and measure what model is giving better result than the others. I think if you just read this book, you should be able to answer at least 50% of the interview questions. It should definitely be more, but at least 50% of the interview theoretical questions on what is the p-value and how do decision trees work, you should be able to pretty easily answer at least 50% of those questions. Now, once you have read that book and you have developed some understanding on the theoretical underpinnings of different machine learning concepts, the next book which I'm going to recommend is going to do a lot of hands-on exercises so that you could learn the frequently used Python libraries like scikit-learn and PyTorch and build some actual real-life projects. These projects will help you build confidence, as well as if there is any programming task in the interviews, which happens for a lot of interviews. If you have gone through the exercises in this book, which I'm going to mention, you should have no problem solving most of those coding problems as well. And the name of the book is Machine Learning with PyTorch and Scikit-learn. The good thing about this is that Scikit-learn and PyTorch, these are the 2 libraries which are used most of the time when you are solving conventional machine learning problems. That is when Scikit-learn comes in. And for most of the deep learning, nowadays the library of choice is PyTorch. Of course, there are some other libraries out there, but these are the most frequently used libraries. And in most interview questions, if you mention that you can solve the problem with either of these 2 libraries, it is considered good enough knowledge. I think this book builds very seamless on top of what you would have covered in the previous book, because there you learned the intuition behind the theory, and in this book, it will be your chance to use the state-of-the-art Python libraries and build some hands-on projects using those 2 libraries. And by building those projects, you'll get a chance to develop an intuition and see how these libraries work in real life to solve some real-world problems. So now with these 2 books, you should be able to answer most of the interview questions which are related to statistics, which are related to the fundamentals of machine learning, and some coding rounds which involve actually building a machine learning model for the given data set. Now, another very important component of most data science interviews is SQL. And for SQL, my book recommendation is the SQL Practical Problems. This book is very lightweight, doesn't require a lot of prerequisite SQL knowledge. And the best thing about this book is that instead of just explaining and teaching to you what different SQL commands look like, it gives you bare minimum of theory and then it asks you to solve a problem. And if you are unable to solve the problem, it gives you some hints and of course the solution. And once you have solved the first problem, then it asks you the second question, which builds on top of the first problem. And in total, the book just has 57 questions, which you have to solve one after another. And the choice of those 57 questions is such that you'll be forced to think and apply different SQL techniques, which will help you immensely not only learn SQL thoroughly, but also perform really well in most of the SQL interview questions. And it is also a very easy read as well. Once you get a hang of it, I think it is very addictive. And the beauty of this book is that it is very interesting and easy to work with. And they have sort of gamified the SQL learning process. So just like if you're playing a game and then you solve a problem, then the next problem comes in, which is a little bit more challenging than the previous one, the whole book is conducted in the same way. And it doesn't have like a million questions, just 57 questions. You can do it over a weekend. And it's very interesting to solve it. If you get stuck, there are hints on how you can try to solve it. And of course, there is a solution as well if you need help. But overall, it is not a very known book, but I have found it personally to be very beneficial. And pretty much everyone I have recommended this book really praised and admired that book. Probably the only downside of this book is that when you start the book, it gives you some directions on how to set up the SQL environment on your laptop so that you could run the problems. And that could take some time. And of course, not the most fun part of the book. But the book has done a good job in terms of explaining how you can set it up. And once you set it up, then starting from question 1 all the way to question 57, it's really a fun ride and probably a very good and fun way of learning SQL just over a weekend. Cool. So with the 3 books which I mentioned, now you should be able to answer most of the statistical questions in the interview, most of the hands-on coding problems in the interview, machine learning fundamentals, which are covered in book 1 and book 2. And then also you should be able to crack the SQL round of your interview, which is a very critical component in most of the data science interviews. Now on to the 4th book, which is covering the topic of Gen AI. I think this is emerging to be a very important topic, which is asked in a lot of data science interview questions recently. And the challenge with Gen AI is that it has been evolving at such a fast pace in the last 2 years that there was not one single comprehensive resource from where you can prepare. Previously, I had been recommending people go on deeplearning.ai and try to get some short courses there to ramp up on Gen AI. But the problem is that deeplearning.ai now has hundreds of short courses. Some of them are excellent, but which one to pick and how much to go through it, it is just very scattered material. Recently, O'Reilly launched this new book, Hands-on Large Language Models, and I've gone through this book. I think this book did a phenomenal job in terms of giving you an intuition around how the LLMs evolved, what was the history of it, and how through different innovations we came to a stage where we now have GPTs. And then it covers in detail how different GPTs work and how you can make it work for most of the practical use cases, including how to write a right prompt and how you can fine-tune the LLMs for your own use cases with minimal amount of resources. Overall, a very good and excellent book. It covers the topic of Gen AI very thoroughly, and since it's like a very recent book, most of the information there is very up to date and presented in a very excellent manner. So if you go through the content of this book and fully understand it and make notes, I'm pretty sure that you should not be able to miss any Gen AI related question which will be asked in your data science interviews. And with these 4 books, you should be able to build a very strong foundation of end-to-end machine learning and data science concepts, which will help you crack your data science interviews. If you need the full guide on how you can prepare for your data science and ML engineering interviews, including the topics covered in this book and some other courses which I usually recommend to cover other topics like learning Python and pandas and some of the NLP knowledge, then you can download the free guide I've added in the description, where I've explained in length that what does a roadmap should look like in terms of what you should be learning, what are the resources which you can use to learn those, and what is sort of the timeline you should have in mind as you're going through different components of learning data science. So feel free to download it and use it as a companion of your learning. And if you're interested in learning how data science job market is doing recently and how you can increase the odds of thriving in this difficult job market, I've explained that in detail in this video. I hope you like it. Thank you so much for watching.